Welcome back to Open Line, talking about the regulation of short-term rental properties like Airbnb. The Metro Council will be considering two primary bills, two pretty much opposing bills coming up at its next meeting, January 16th. We have people representing both of those bills up here. Streaming live on Facebook, several comments. Ivory Frazier says, tell them to move downtown. The Nashville area is popping. We have people really commenting on both sides. Greg Karen Munn, as much as it may be profitable for the owner, it's not good for neighborhoods. And we're seeing, again, lots of comments on both sides. I want to start going through the phone calls here. We have a lot of those as well. Let's go to Adam. Hello, Adam.
Yes, thank you. This question is for John Summers. Why should a neighbor's rights outweigh the rights of a property owner that are allowed to rent their homes, as is the right to be? That's been that way since the beginning of the United States. Thank you.
You didn't grow up in the same United States I did, because we have zoning in the United States that I grew up in, and we've only allowed short-term rentals in properties in Nashville since 2015. So, you know, we have to balance off competing property rights. And the people that live there, who are residents, who are homeowners, that's their home and where they've raised their family, they have rights as well. And we've only interjected these short-term rentals into our neighborhoods for the last 2 years. And so I would say that homeowners' rights should trump business rights when it comes to residential zone neighborhoods. If you want to run your business, run it in an area that is more conducive for it, and that's what we think the non-owner occupied, these mini hotels, they should be run in our commercial mixed use downtown districts and leave our residents and our neighborhoods for neighbors.
All right, let's go to Janet. Hello, Janet.
If you want to run your business.
Turn down your TV. We'll come back to you. Brian. Wait a minute here. Brian on 4. Go right ahead, Brian.
Hey, the lady on the right, is she employed by the Airbnb Association? Does she get a lot of benefits and, you know, perks, dinners out and stuff like that to promote it? Don't answer yet. Let me finish my statement. You know, these commercials I saw on TV promoting the Airbnb, you know me and you know I know Nick, and I can't remember your name, Mr. Host, but you know I've called in before.
Right.
Know that I've been fairly neutral on this, siding towards the homeowner until I saw those commercials. And you know I'm an advertiser for the Natural Retrospect. And when I saw those commercials produced from either Michigan Avenue, Chicago, or Park Avenue, New York, I flipped out. I said, no way. This is out of hand. No way. And this has been going on before the law. They did the law 2 years ago, whatever. Listen, I remember in the mid-2000s, I lived by the airport from 2002 to 2008. So, sorry, getting a little sketchy.
Well, let's talk about what, we have a ton of calls. Let's talk about what you brought up. I think it's an interesting point. He's talking about the commercials that shows there's a lot of people watching, people outside of Nashville watching Airbnb. He's questioning, you know, are you being paid by them and that kind of thing. And then the commercials, it turned him off. What is coming into Nashville from outside like Airbnb from you know, outside of Nashville? What's happening there?
Yeah. I think I might have a little different perspective, but to answer the question, no, I'm not paid by Airbnb. This is a solely volunteer position, but I do have a real, very full-time, I lost my mic.
That's all right.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
So I have a very real full-time job, which is actually in digital advertising. And that is all Airbnb and HomeAway are to me. It's digital advertising. Have a long-term rental. I use Zillow. I use Trulia. No different. They connect me to a tenant. Airbnb connects me to a tenant. I think Airbnb and HomeAway are by no means perfect, but one company is. You know, Facebook has a marketplace for apartments. Do we go to Facebook and say, hey, that landlord hasn't filled out their landlord registration form for the city of Nashville, so you can't list, or you didn't run a background check, or you didn't run a credit check, so you can't list? We don't do that to them. Why is Airbnb and HomeAway being held to a different standard? Google is testing short-term rentals in Europe. not long before it comes here and before the market fragments, and quite frankly, it already is. So I think that we're putting way too much attention on Airbnb and HomeAway. This is about us. This is the people who live here and own homes here and want to have the right to do so, not to the detriment of anybody else, but simply because we think that we can peacefully coexist.
Is this a sort of a test market? The fact that we're seeing those commercials, again, it does indicate, boy, they're certainly watching.
Yeah.
Are they concerned? How closely are they watching Nashville, and are they concerned if it goes one way, it could lead to things going that way in other cities? I mean, are we sort of a test case?
I can't speak for them, honestly. I mean, we are at the meetings together and stuff like that. We certainly work together to try to call people, but I don't know if we're a test market or what. I know we're an important market because I've heard them say it. But we genuinely, I'm not involved in all in the know, I guess, about why or what their plans are beyond that.
What do you think of that, John?
Well, we're a cash cow right now for Airbnb and HomeAway, and between the two, they have about 80–90% of the listings. So, and all due respect to Megan, she may list with other companies, but the vast majority are listing with these two companies.
Right now.
Airbnb is a $30 billion industry. They're all over the world. And right now, we're one of the major tourist cities that do not have restrictions on short-term rentals to the extent that other cities. And other cities like San Francisco, the home of Airbnb, and Austin, Texas, the home of HomeAway, have now got restrictions in terms of not having non-owner occupied STRs in the city. But one of the things is that Airbnb and HomeAway are still listing today and have for 2 years illegal STRs on their websites. They know you're supposed to have a permit. They can ask, do you have a permit? But instead, we only have about as of today, 3,576 permits in Nashville. But if you go look at inside Airbnb, some of the websites that do data collection, there's over 5,300. So Airbnb is making money. Now just do a little math, all folks that are out there. Take $100 a night and multiply it by 5,000. And then start multiply by 365 and say you only have half the time rented out. Or maybe it's $150 or $200. Go on a website and see what some of the Airbnbs are charging. So I think Megan and the industry has tried to say, oh, well, we're really more like long-term renters. No, they're not. They're really like the hotel-motel industry. It's a great model. Airbnb really came up with a great model. They're now the largest hotel in terms of number of rooms, I think, in the whole country, if not the world, and they don't own a piece of property. They let people like Megan own the property, do the work. They just share in the profits and a percentage of what's made.
And so do the property owners, the people
Right.
who,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
they also share, and they're people that passionately want to do that.
Estimates show that you can make 3 to 4 times as much money with a short-term rental as you can with a long-term rental. That's why these folks are in the business. It's all about the money.
Can I actually address that, though? That's not why. You don't know us, and you don't know the why for a lot of people. I do it simply, I had no idea. We hadn't had property before other than the property we lived in. We did this because I got laid off from my job and I never wanted to be in that position again. So we went and we were like, well, let's do a long-term and a short-term. We'll see what works. I have more control. That's why I want to do this. I can go in my house between every single guest and see, is there a leak that's starting that I can get ahead of before it's a big problem? I have had friends who have had nightmare horror stories with long-term rentals, and my goal was to get away from that and have more control. There are months where if I was renting that property long-term, I would profit. You want to talk about 3 to 4 times, that's gross. Anybody knows when you take away your expenses, like all of the taxes we have to pay and the things that we have to pay for more frequently than a long-term rental, you don't really net out that much differently. It's about more than just the money for most of the people that do this.
And before we go to break, as far as oversight or cracking down on some of the bad ones, there's not a lot of, if you call the police are busy, it's a noise thing, they may not be there. There are not enough codes people. Is there any sense that these things, that there can be something put into place that would make this more acceptable, I guess, to neighborhood groups? I'm sure they're frustrated that they're calling and no one is responding.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. It's after the fact. You've already been woken up in the middle of the night. You've already had your sleep disturbed. Your small child's been awakened. And more than anything, it's just the constant not knowing who's next door. You may have a long-term rental property next door that's a problem, but you can track down the landlord and eventually you'll get it solved. These folks are coming and going, and as good as Megan may be running her business, and it's real clear from her description, it's a business. You know, you cannot call the police and undo the noise or undo the worry or undo the concern. And we've literally had, you know, drug busts now and some, you know, STRs in Nashville. You know, in other cities, I haven't seen it here, but in other cities, it's been for the porn industry. They come in, they rent a place, they do movies. That's pretty big in California. So that's
Okay,
why
well,
you
now
have this stuff being cracked down all over.
What do you think about calling the regulation? You know, if there is somebody that there's a noise problem, police aren't able to get there, is there something, more codes people, more enforcement of trying to crack down on bad actors?
Yeah. So as far as a lot of us have put our own mechanisms in place so it never gets to that, right? Like a lot of us use noise detection software, security cameras. I had 2 English bulldogs at my house that the security cameras are so good that I could hear them snorting on it, right? So those of us who are good actors, and there are a lot of us, more of us, and just to correct Mr. Summers, it wasn't 1,000 properties that had complaints, it was actually 984 complaints, the majority of which were tied to just a few properties. You have to go after them, right? So yeah, you're gonna get, you may have to be reactionary, you may have to call, and there may not sometimes be things that you can do, but again, I go back to, how is that any different when you're living across from a band that lives there full time?
All right, we're going to take a break. Lots of callers. We'll get to those calls when we come back. Also, comments on our Facebook page. We'll be back right after this.